Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about the #1 cause of strange electrical problems in your car. Bad grounds. Now cars have positive electricity that runs in the wires and negative electricity, the ground, that run through the ground system. Well, anybody can figure out all the wires send electricity to devices, right? But it's 12-volt electricity and it's DC, direct current. You have to have power and ground. If you got power and there's no way for it going back, it won't connect the circuit and it won't work. So you have to have a complete circuit with power and ground. If you get a ground fault, weird stuff, your radio can lose stations, your headlights can dim, systems might not work, or they might come down at the wrong time. You might step on your brake pedal, but your headlights come on. Those are all ground-related problems. So you get all kinds of weird symptoms. It can be hard to find bad grounds, and here's the reason why. Here's your negative terminal, that grounds. This bolts to the metal on the frame, to the engine. There are many ground spots on a car where the power is grounded. I'll show you on my computer. On my all data repair, we're gonna go to ground locations. I'll show you where they all are. And you can see there's grounds, ignition system, power, radiator, splices. They're all over the place. You can see here, this is a location of where the ground connectors are, where the wiring harness connect. The upside down triangles are the location of grounding points. These are all grounding points for the engine, and as we go down, the right fender has one, has another. The left fender also has two. The connectors, some of them are behind the headlights. They're all over the place. The engine wire and sensor wire is the left bank of the cylinder head. People often leave that off if they do any kind of engine work. Then you have all the stuff in the dash. Look at all the ground points there. There they all are. And then we go to the entire body of the car. There's all the ground points. The triangles. They are all over the place. Look at these. Under the driver's seat, under the passenger seat, front side and rear quarter wheelhouse, right hand, the left center pillar, behind the rear passenger seat. They are all over the place. Bad enough that you can't see electricity. You got to use machines to gauge them. If you don't know where these ground points are, you're not even going to see them behind a pillar, under the seat. You have to have wiring diagrams if you're going to mess around with any of this stuff. It's just too complex. And all I have to say here is, thank goodness this is a Lexus. It never breaks down. You get in a wreck, of course, that can destroy electronic stuff. You go through flood water that can destroy electronic stuff. Since this thing's never been wrecked or flooded, everything is pretty much intact, and the only electrical things I've ever had to change was the battery and the alternator, which wore out. Now, many cars like Fiats and a lot of Chevys have ground problem as they age. They have historically, and they continue to have them because of cheaper manufacturing. The grounds get corroded, or they're not put on tight, or the anti-corrosion material was never put on the ground or the bolt, and they just flat start to rust, and then they don't connect anymore. Now you can use a simple device like this Nova tester. It'll do positive volts, as you can see. There's red, 11.7, but it also does grounds. There's green and 0. So you can see when you test the positive, 12.3 volts. Then we'll check the negative, and you can see it's different. It has 0 volts, but the green light is on. That shows that it's grounding. Now, of course, it's going to ground. That's the negative terminal of the battery. So we get the test meter. We'll stick it on the engine. And as you can see, it's showing the same 0 volts, and the green light's on, so it's grounded. So you can use simple testers like this with giant 20-foot cords to reach just about anything on your car. It's a good way to check for bad grounds that are really bad. Also look if they're all corroded and rusted, take them off. Get emery paper, make them shiny, then bolt them on tight. But of course, there are sometimes intermittent ground shorts that can be absolute stinkers. Then old Scotty has to get out his really expensive stuff, like this fluke meter that can do graphic analysis of intermittent shorts. And as you're driving, you can graph it and see, gee, every once in a while it glitches down, you know, it's got an intermittent ground short. Yes, it's electricity. It can be a gigantic pain in the rear end, but normally you're going to get a corroded ground or a wire. When you take it apart, you can see it's green inside. Clean it up, put it back together. But if you have a really crazy one that shows only once in a blue moon, only maybe once out of every 500 miles, you're going to need something like this fluke meter that can do graphic analysis of intermittent shorts. It gets really complicated. That's the reason you need a good, honest mechanic. Even an honest mechanic, if you have an electrical short, can't tell you what it's going to cost until he finds it, and then he's found it. So you need an honest guy who can show you equipment like this. He can show you how it works, and he'll say, okay, I'm going to charge you so much per hour. How long do you want me to look? And if he's honest and he finds it in an hour, so maybe he'll charge you 140 bucks, right? If you really want to go out, you can buy one of these things. You know, you're going to spend many hundreds of dollars, and you have to learn how to operate the thing to find it yourself. But even an honest guy with one of these is going to have to tell you, I don't know what the problem is. We have to locate it. And he's got to start searching. You can find the obvious ones yourself. And there are some companies out there that are really nice, like AutoZone. And you say, I would like a printout of the ground wiring for my car, like I just showed you on my All Data. AutoZone owns All Data. They can print you out the picture of where all the grounds are. You'll know where they all are, and you can test them with this to make sure it isn't an obvious shorted wire where you can see it's broken, or corroded, or a loose connector. This can test an awful lot of stuff if you know where the grounds are. On this Lexus, a lot of times guys forget the ground wires that go on the back of the head. They're hidden way down there, but when you have the information, you know, there it is. And as you can see with the test, it's green, 0. That ground works perfectly fine. If you're going to attempt to find the source of weird electrical problems in your car, take advantage of companies like AutoZone that'll print you out the pages that have all the grounds. And you'll know what you have to check. Yeah, there's an awful lot of them. Now, aside from normal corrosion, if a car's been wrecked or flooded and you get weird electrical problems after the wreck area, check the wreck area. Odds are a ground wire was broken. Another wire has been broken in that area. Check that. If it's been flooded and you know what parts have been flooded, let's say it flooded inside the dash, you're going to have to check all the computers there for bad grounds and bad wiring. But aside from that, here's the #1 ground problem: poor workmanship. I've had more people bring me cars with squirrely electrical problems, and the first thing I say is, well, have you had any work done lately? And I'll say, yeah, we had the valve cover gasket changed. We just had a clutch put in, or we had the transmission worked on. Then you go to that area and look. Valve cover gaskets. Under here, you got to take the intake manifold off. The grounds are down there. They could have easily disturbed the wires, or they didn't put the ground wires back on, or even worse. The absolute worst case scenario is they put it on finger tight, but not wrench tight. So sometimes it connects, sometimes it doesn't. Then you're going to need one of these fancy fluke type meters that can do a digital analysis and do graphing, so you can find out that, oh, there's an intermittent short on that ground. So if you've had work done recently, check them physically. Is this tight? Yes, this bolt is tight. The wires aren't loose. Here's the connectors. They're on tight. And when we take the connectors apart, we see shiny copper inside, not green coated copper. Here's the example of one that's starting to turn green. You can see there's a reasonable amount of corrosion on top of this connector. And as I said earlier, look in areas that have recently either been wrecked, flooded, or worked on. Guys will say, oh, I didn't work on that. You take your car in, somebody works on it, you get it back, you got a problem you didn't have before. Odds are they did something wrong. That's just a fact. Realize some of the ground straps are on the bottom of the car in the transmission. You gotta crawl under. You gotta take all that plastic crap out of the way. That's why you need the wiring diagram, so you know where they all are. You might say, why does it get squirrely with no ground? You have a bad large ground, like say ground from the battery to the engine. It's gotta ground somehow. So then, a lot of times, it'll start using power wires that are still connected as the path to ground. And it can destroy your computer. It can wipe out fuel injection systems. It can do all kinds of damage just because you have a ground that's gone bad. And really, you wouldn't believe how many cars I've fixed by just tightening or replacing a bad ground terminal, or where it bolts onto the engine, or like here, where it bolts onto the body. My advice here is, let's say you're looking to buy a car and you see historically they've had computer problems, don't buy that car. I just talked to a guy with a 4-year-old F-150. He's now on his 4th main computer. 3 of them have burned out. And it wasn't like he was changing them himself either. He was having them replaced at the dealer. But for all other problems, hey, find a 12-volt short isn't that bad if you got a simple tool like this and know where the grounds are hiding. A lot of times you can easily fix them yourself. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.